Guys, so let's continue from where we left. I want to apologize for my voice because I'm having some cold. I'm sorry for this. Okay, so we've said that we needed to create a nested subsegment. And the need to create the nested subsegment is actually that we want to see the sub functions or the inner functions that are being called within this function. And we want to see it in the create post context. Okay, so what I mean that we want to see the create post here, and we want to see the journey of the inner functions that have been called within this function. So this what we mean by nested subsegment. So this is the main segment, this is a subsegment, and those are nested subsegments. Okay, perfect. And hence we can trace the duration of each request and what it took. Okay, so let's continue here. Perfect. So we need to add the nested subsegment. So we have here the subsegment of create posts. Okay, and we'll add the nested subsegment. Okay, great. So to create the nested subsegment, so what we need to do, that we need to wrap each nested subsegment, okay, in the same way that we have called this function. Okay, so actually this function creates a segment and it's being created within the current segment. I hope this makes sense. So exactly this is exactly what we are going to do. So we're gonna go here and we're gonna create here our nested subsegment. Okay, we need here to name this nested subsegment. Okay, so let's call it load image to S3. Okay, so let's wrap this upload image to S3 function here. Perfect. Okay, so these wrap now, and clearly it will be named upload image to S3, and it is within the context of create post. Perfect. Okay, so here this function will be a nested subsegment, and after this we want also to create a nested subsegment as well for these two functions. So let's do the same here again very quickly. Perfect. Okay, more on here. Perfect. Okay, yes, get the same thing here. Okay, oops, I guess we mistakenly copied the return as well, so this was wrong. So we need to remove this return keyword here. Sorry about this. Okay, add wait as well is much better now. Okay, so now we have, and this actually nested subsegment. Okay, we can call it trigger request station. Okay, is looking very good. Okay, so now we have wrapped or the function part. So we have wrapped the critical, and we have created a nested subsegment for the critical aspects of the function, which is the upload to S3. We need to track this function, and also we need to track the creation of the post. Okay, and we also need to track the triggering of the post notification to AWS SQS. Okay, this is amazing. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to make sure that the S3 service itself is gonna be traced by the X-Ray, and we need it actually to be traced. Beside being traced here as a function, we need the S3 function or the S3 service to be traced as a remote service by the X-Ray. What I mean by this is that actually if we looked here, okay, other than having the S3 here, which is okay, very great, and the recognition here, which is also very great, okay, and the SQS, we also need to have this shape or diagram here. Other than having the segment and subsegment existing inside these nodes, we also need to have a separate nodes for our external services, for our microservices, like the recognition, the SQS, and the S3. And to do this, we actually need to add a simple functionality here. So let's go to the S3 service. So what we need to do is that we need to substitute this AWS with, alternatively, will be altered with AWS X-Ray. So let's look to this. So all that we need to do, we already have here the AWS X-Ray SDK. Perfect. So we'll just replace this here. Okay, so what we need to do, that we actually need to define our X-Ray AWS is gonna equal to AWS X-Ray dot capture AWS, which actually will trace this service to be shown in the trace map, and we will wrap the AWS SDK in it. Perfect. And then we will use this X-Ray AWS instead of this AWS. So we've replaced the S3, and we will also replace the recognition service. So this is really nice. Okay. So I'm sorry, one thing that I forget to make sure, that we need to make sure if we have here an undefined subsegment. So this will be very important because it can cause a lot of issues if you have an undefined subsegment, of course. So we just will add a simple log to warn us if we have this issue. We just trigger the subsegment is undefined here, also here, and also, and it will throw an error as well. Okay, so now we have the SQS and the S3 being used by the X-Ray AWS SDK. Perfect. Okay, so what is our current segment here? So the active segment. What do you think? What do you think the active segment here? Is the active segment here? Where is it? Is it Awesome Blog API? Is it Create Post? Is it where? Where our active segment? So if we think about it, okay, our active segment will be the current segment that actually is wrapping the invoked function. So this function, the segment for this function is the segment that is wrapping it. Okay, so it should be the upload image to S3. So this is the segment, and this is how we can trace effectively our functions. Okay, and actually our nested functions as well. So here we have the handle image upload, and we have the segment here. Okay, so as we said, that segment will be the current function, a segment that invoke this function. So here our segment. So after having our segment, we will add the annotations and the metadata. And as we've said, also the annotations is actually ways to filter your logs. For example, in post service here, we have added annotations like success true or user found false and so on. So in this way, you can filter by these annotations. Okay. So after this, we need to add the annotations in our S3 service. Okay. So in upload S3, our segment here. So after getting the results, we can then add some annotations. So to make sure for you guys, I just copy and paste them. So we have here upload success will be true as an annotation, and we'll add a metadata here, a metadata which is like logs for this annotation. Okay, or this segment. So we will add the metadata here with bucket and key. Perfect. And if we have a failure here or an error, we can also add like annotation and metadata here as well. Okay. So here we have also the check image moderation, which is actually being called here. Okay. So after this, we have also, after calling the upload image to S3, we have also this function, which is check image moderation. So we can also add here the annotation here as well. So we'll get our segment here. And after getting our segment, which is the current function that have the nested subsegment, and our segment here, which is the active segment or the current segment that is calling this function. Okay, we've told before. So we have here our segment, and we'll add our annotations and metadata for this as well. So let's copy and paste them as well here. We'll add annotation for navigation success data and so on. Okay. And if we have an error, we'll add the error here as well. Okay, looking good. Okay, so this is looking perfect actually. So let's go with the next part. Okay, so let's continue. So after this, we have the insert DV. So after this, we actually need to add some annotations and metadata for the create post here. So let's copy and paste our required annotations we have. We can create like post created and post ID and post created and post ID and the title and the metadata. I guess it's actually better to name this as a nested subsegment. Sorry about this. I think this is way better here. Call it a nested subsegment. This is way better as a naming convention. So we have a difference between the subsegment and the nested subsegment. Okay. Here our subsegment. Yeah, these make sense. We added this. But now we want to trigger the post notification. We need to trace this one. So actually, this one, let's think about it a little bit. So if we think about this, so our post notification here is actually triggering another Lambda function. Okay, so because if you remember our service architecture here, we have, let's look briefly on it quickly. Here we have our main Lambda function, which is awesome post function. So our function here, our main function here, triggers or sends a message to SQS. So this is what is happening here. We have here the trigger post notification. Okay, and also remember that we have done this to ensure scalability of the application and also concurrency. Our main function don't need to handle sending emails and retries, which will be the role of the event queue Lambda here and the SQS as well. Okay. So we have the trigger post notification here. So our trigger post notification is actually sending the message to SQS. Okay. So what we need to do now is that we need to notify the SQS here that we actually have a current trace. Well, because what AWS will do here, it actually will link the event queue Lambda here, the function that has been triggered, with the main trace here. Though this is actually perfect. So in this way, we can smartly trace our microservice and serverless architectures. Because if you will see here we have what? We have the SQS. And after we have the SQS here, we can also trace what happened to the function, the serverless function that has been triggered by this trace. So this is the linked trace as well. So we need to pass the linked trace here in order to have this tracing to work or to function. Okay. So let's look on this. So let's continue here. Okay. So let's start attaching the X-Ray to the SQS service here. As we've seen with the S3 service, we add the X-Ray AWS from the X-Ray SDK, capture AWS, and we will add the AWS SDK as the parameter, and then we will use this X-Ray AWS to be used by the SQS service. Okay, so after this, we will add here the segment. We will get the segment here. Okay. So we have said before, actually the segment here is the current segment or the active segment. So what is the active segment here? You should know by now. So the active segment here is the one calling or the segment that is active at the time that this function is called. So the active segment, so where this function is called, this function actually is called here. Where is the wrapping segment? So this is the wrapping segment. It means that this is the current active segment. Perfect. Okay. So what we'll do now, because I have told you that we need to send or notify this SQS and notify the triggered Lambda about our current segment to be able to trace it after this. So we can have a traceable microservices architecture and also serverless, okay? So that we can have this traceability feature here, okay? So we can trace the SQS and the triggered Lambda function. So we need to pass to this SQS the current segment that we have, the active segment. And the active segment, the SQS will automatically fetch or link its trace ID here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now let's add the segment ID into the send message function. So we'll have a parameter named message attributes. So we will add a key value here. The key will be named X Amazon trace ID, and we'll have it will be an object. It will have two key value pairs. So it will be data type, will be string, because we will pass the segment ID. And also we will have the string value here. And the string value, of course, will be segment ID. Amazing. So that's it, guys. So this is how we trace our SQS function or our SQS service between different microservices or different serverless functions. So we pass the trace ID here so we can trace the request lifecycle. So now we look into our post service here. Before we go to the post service, we need to add, of course, some annotations in the SQS service. After all, it's the right time to do this, okay? Okay, so now let's go to the post service. Okay, so now let's add our annotations here and the metadata. So I just copy and paste them here to make it short for you. And also have some annotations in the error case here, okay? Perfect, okay. So after this, we will go to the post service. So after going to the post service here, we need to complete the functionality of the tracing of the trigger notification. We need to make sure that we have the annotation here, okay, and also close the subsegment here, okay, and closing here by closing the main subsegment, which is the create post subsegment here. So I guess it all looks perfect now. Or I guess except for one, thing that I have mistakenly put here, because there should be await and not return. We don't want to return here. Of course, we need to await for this. Okay. We are only returning the main functionality here. Okay. At the end, we return our new post. So our final product, we finally made it. Okay, so now let's deploy our SAM template. Let's say SAM deploy guided. Okay, awesome. Let's go through the instructions here. Okay, so let's go through these steps and we will go into the deployment. So let me very quickly show you where the SQS Lambda handler being triggered by this SQS service. So we have here the SQS handler, which is the Lambda function for the SQS. So this is our Lambda function here, as you can see. And here we are getting the SQS event here. So we have the SQS handler. And we're normally getting the record body and data, and then we're continuing our logic. Okay, the change set are ready for deployment now. in our CloudFormation template. So let's review our change set here. So all of this is very normal, nothing worth our attention here. Okay, so let's plug the change set here. So now we have updated our Lambda function with SAM deployment. Perfect. So now let's test the functionality here. So let's open the Awesome Post web page and then open the Create Post page. Okay, so we'll use the AI integration here to speed up our post process. So let's make a good post here. Let's actually make this post about X-Ray. So now we can write like some words and make the AI integration quickly continue our post here and say no doubt that X is a very effective and serverless job. So we can say here, make it longer. So this is a further custom prompt here. So enhance with the AI. I will take this without reviewing title and get, okay, let's go with this. Okay, and let's have an image here and create post. Okay, so let's look at the AWS console here. Okay, so let's look at our recent traces here. So our traces here, let's filter with the date. Okay, get our dates here. That is actually good. Okay, that is perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go. Perfect. It has already reached the trace, and as you can see here, we have in this time range these traces, the Awesome Blog API, which is our main segment, if you remember, and this is the API gateway execution, Lambda execution. Okay, and here the AWS SES for the email service, and we have here all our response codes and the response times and the HTTP method. And as you can see, this is actually the create post that we have just created with post requests. If we click on it, come on guys, this is awesome guys. So now we can see our full logic in play here. Okay, so this is actually working. We have the client request, the Awesome Blog API, which is our main segment if you remember, and those our external or remote AWS services. And here we have our linked trace, and this is the function that have been triggered with the SQS here. Okay, and as you can see, these services all finished with an okay. So as you can see also that all these services actually have passed with an okay result. Okay, no one throw an error or the 400 response. And also let's see here our segment timeline. So we have here the main invocation of the Lambda function, and then we have here our Awesome Blog API, which is our main segment here, and here our segment, the create post, and those are the nested subsegment that we have created. So if we, for example, if we clicked on the upload images here and we checked the annotation, we can see the annotation here that we have added in our logic, which is the recognition success and image uploaded and upload success. And this is the metadata that we have used with this nested subsegment. So guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching the video till the end. I hope you got some useful information from the video, and see you in the next one.